Oh, hey, welcome! Thank you for tuning into my channel. Today, I am going to be reviewing, rating, and giving facts on Frank Darabonts' The Mist. Now, The Mist came out in 2007, and it's an adaptation of Stephen King's novella of The Mist. Now, a novella and a novel, if you don't know, are completely different. A novel is obviously a book, and it's fucking long. And a novella is really short. It could be a short story in a newspaper. An example would be if you've ever seen The Lawnmower Man, the movie. That's also an adaptation of Stephen King's novella, but it's completely different. There's like only one scene in a 2-hour movie of The Lawnmower Man that's actually in the novella of Stephen King, but it's inspired and based on it, and that's what this is. And Frank Darabonts did such a great job that when Stephen King was there to view the screening of it, he said it actually frightened the shit out of him. So Frank Darabont did a fantastic job with this, and he's no stranger to Stephen King because he did The Green Mile and he did Shawshank Redemption. Now, those aren't horror movies, obviously, but they're both wonderfully done, just amazing, and you always want to know what's happening next, and you can't ever guess what's happening next. And that's exactly how this movie is. From start to finish, you just don't know what's going to happen next, and you're like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit. And all the way, literally all the way to the end, you're just on the edge of your freaking seat, and you're just like, oh my god. Just the movie is fantastic. It definitely has a few jump scares. If you aren't familiar with this movie, then you're definitely gonna enjoy it. And obviously, if you've seen it, then it's always a good rewatch. I haven't seen this movie in like a very long time. It's been like 10 plus years since I watched this, so it was really great that a friend of mine, Tommy Weinblatt, recommended I do a review on this movie, and I was like, wow, The Mist? I haven't seen that in a minute. Watched it, and it was even better than I remember it. It's really great, really great. So I'm excited to take you on this ride because it's going to be good. There are a lot of great facts. So let's get on with the movie, shall we? The Mist opens up on David Drayton in his office working on a painting for a movie studio. When the power goes out, David and his family realize that the storm is getting more dangerous, and they hide in the basement for safety. Come morning, they survey the damage and can't believe what has happened. David and his family notice something strange coming from the mountains. They try to come up with an easy explanation for what it is, but just brush it off as something natural. Okay, so if you pay attention to the opening scene when David is painting in his workspace, you'll notice the paintings are actually movie posters. You see a child holding a red balloon. That's it. You see John Carpenter's The Thing, and you see Pan's Labyrinth, and the one he's working on is Dark Tower, and you also see Christine, which most of those are the other Stephen King novels. And the nice nod to putting The Thing in there is that's John Carpenter's movie. And John Carpenter also made a movie called The Fog, which is very similar. It shares a lot of similarities with this movie, The Mist, because mist and fog, right? So, but these are actual posters made by a man named Drew Struzan. And he is a famous movie poster artist who's made all the posters for the Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, almost everything that's not straight up photoshopped. And I prefer those better because it just shows that they actually put some fucking work into shit. Not like every single Marvel movie. Yeah, I'm talking shit on Marvel again, but I digress. Let's see what else happens to David and his family. David, his son, and his neighbor, Brent Norton, go to the local grocery store to get supplies when the air raid siren begins to go off. The shoppers, all concerned, stare off into the distance till they see a man running towards them in blood, with a warning. As the mist creeps ever closer, it engulfs the entire parking lot. Okay, so in this scene, actually like about maybe 10 seconds after what I just showed you, an earthquake happens, right? The whole store rumbles. And I probably should have included that, but I didn't. But when the whole store rumbles, all the fear that you hear and all the screams are real. It's not acting. And that's because they put a whole bunch of subwoofers in the ceiling and underneath the tiles to give the experience of an actual like earthquake, like the floor is shaking and shit, and that it be really loud. So everyone is actually terrified. That's why you see everyone like fall to the floor and just start screaming. It's not acting. They were actually scared at first and they were not told about it at all. No one, the only person that knew it was happening was Thomas Jane, the main actor. So I thought that was a pretty cool little thing that Frank Darabont did. So let's see what else happens to these nice citizens of Newcastle. David goes in the back of the store to check for supplies. While searching, he hears a noise coming from the rear door. Something on the other side that is trying to get in. He runs back to his friends, tries to convince them. He tries to show them, although they don't believe anything is on the other side of the door. One of the workers offers to go outside to remove what is ever obstructing the air vents. Joking around in full confidence that nothing is out there, something appears. As the creature tries to retreat, David takes an axe and chops off one of its tentacles. Okay, so in the scene with the tentacles and shit, in both the book for the movie, which usually books for movies, the novelization usually differs a little, it gives more info, and the novella, Stephen King's version, there's no description of what the tentacles are actually attached to. You never find out. And also, Frank Darabont wanted to use practical effects for this. He wanted to like actually get, tentacles and mix it with CGI. But there was only 8 weeks to film, so he did not have the time to do what he wanted to do, so he stuck with CGI. Now, back in 2007, this looked fucking good. But obviously now, it doesn't look that great. But I mean, it's still pretty wicked the first time you're seeing it. But let's see what else happens to these citizens of Newcastle. David and the others try to convince Mr. Norton on what they experienced in the back of the store. But of course, he does not believe them and thinks he's playing a trick. David then tries to convince the rest of the store on what they experienced. Not believing him, they take a new group of people back to the store, where they see the piece of the tentacle that David had chopped off. Okay, so Stephen King is a lot like Stan Lee when it comes to his movies. If you notice, in almost every MCU movie, Stan Lee had a cameo. In almost every Stephen King adaptation, Stephen King had a small part of it. Whether it be a walk-on, or he says one line, or whatever. Usually always has a part. Always. And the biker that poked the tentacle with the broom, Frank Darabont originally wanted Stephen King to play that character. He said, hey, I want you to play this character just so you can like be a part of the movie because this is like yours. But he respectfully declined. And then the part went to the actor Brian Libby. I think it would have been cool to see Stephen King in this movie because he's in a lot of his own film adaptions. But, oh well, he missed out on this one. But at least he still appreciates the movie for what it is. Let's see what else happens to the citizens of Newcastle. Okay, so this scene actually spiked a lot of controversy or talk amongst fans because after, they go out, before when the mist first came and there were people outside, they heard screaming, right? Because they were getting killed or being attacked or whatever. But they go out, this group of people, looks like about like 8 or 9 people, including the guy that has the rope attached to him, and they hear nothing. Absolutely nothing. So people are like, well, besides the guy that had the rope attached to him, did everybody else escape? Or was it some massive creature that just killed them all in an instant? There is no explanation. And when asked about it to Stephen King, he said he'll leave that up to you, which I hate it when people do that. I mean, I think they died, but there's no proof. There's no bodies there's nothing. There's no blood besides, the dude that's chopped in half that they pull up. But, I mean, I don't know what to think. Oh, this motherfucker Stephen King. All right, let's see what the citizens of Newcastle are going to do now. Come Nightfall, the citizens of Newcastle have a whole new set of problems. And on top of that, even more problems. As the creatures break into the store, chaos ensues. As everything settles down and they now seem safe, one of the people tells David that Mrs. Carmody was right, that they would be attacked and someone would die, making her some sort of a prophet. Okay, so a few facts about this scene. Stephen King was in a convenience store, and he was just shopping, and he looks forward and he sees the front of the store and it's plate glass, just like in the movie. And he thinks to himself, what would happen if a whole bunch of insects just crashed into the front? And that's what gave him the idea of giant insects. So that was his little thing. Also, in the original script, after the big bird thing crashes or makes the hole, one of the birds weren't supposed to crawl through. They originally had the idea of like a giant prehistoric-like centipede crawling through and just eating motherfuckers. They initially cut that because it would have cost too much and take up too much time. So they just stuck with one of the bird-like creatures crawling in. I think the centipede would have been a nice touch because it's a different type of creature and just seeing how they killed that motherfucker. You know what I mean? But what do you think? They should have gone with giant centipede or bird thing? I think they should have gone with the centipede. But oh well, we got this and it fits and it works, right? So let's see what the citizens of Newcastle are going to do now. With people injured from the previous attack at night and low on supplies and no way to treat them, David and a group of people go next door to the pharmacy, where they run into a whole new problem. David and their group try to make a quick escape, experiencing casualties on the way out. Realizing that there's nothing that they can do, they cut their losses and run back to the supermarket. Okay, so some facts about this scene. I didn't show it in the clip, but earlier in the movie, right in the beginning, when David and Mr. Drayton arrive at the store, in the parking lot you see the pharmacy is called King's Pharmacy. That's a nod at Stephen King. Also because, not just to put him in the movie, but Stephen King played a pharmacist in the movie Thinner. So that's kind of like a way to connect the movies, because a lot of Stephen King's movies are in the same universe. They all take place in the same world. Like, it's not just a whole different story. Like, this is happening in this world. No, a lot of them are all together. And in a later video, I'll explain it, but in the movie The Dark Tower, a lot of the events are connected to that. It's really fucked up. It's hard to explain right now. It would take a long time to explain, but that's just how it is, and that's how Stephen King's done it. But also, in the scene when they're in the pharmacy and they first get attacked, one of the guys falls into a book rack, a spinning book rack, and every single book on that rack, if you look at it, is a Stephen King novel. There's Cujo, there's Thinner, there's The Last Stand, there's a whole bunch of them, literally all of them, which I think is really cool. Since Stephen King wasn't in it, Frank Darabonts tried to include him in every way, because Darabont did Green Mile and he did Shawshank Redemption, and you know there was I can't recall no material of Stephen King's there, even though at the time those movies took place, they were all in the past and not present day like this movie. But now let's see what the citizens of Newcastle are going to do after this debacle. As things get from bad to worse, Mrs. Carmody rallies the people behind her as she is some sort of prophet. David and his group notice the other soldiers are missing, so they look for them, seeing that they have killed themselves. David confronts Private Jessup, telling him that he knows something, insinuating that all of this is his fault. One of the worshippers grabs him and puts him in front of Mrs. Carmody, makes him explain what is going on and what he knows. After hearing the truth, the group blames this man alone for their problems. They kill him and sacrifice him to the creatures that are outside. A little fact about the actor that plays Private Jessup. This doesn't really have anything to do with the movie, but it might be a cool fact for you guys to know that if he looks familiar, that's because he is extremely familiar, especially to those of you that are Star Wars fans and gamers. That is Sam Witwer. Sam Witwer is the face of Starkiller from Star Wars Force Unleashed 1 and 2. He also was the voice of Darth Maul in Star Wars The Clone Wars. I just thought that'd be a little fact to throw out there. share with you guys if you didn't know. So after this whole fuck up and this whole mess, let's see what the citizens of Newcastle will do now. David and his group realize that they have a better chance of survival out there than they do inside of the store. Mrs. Carmody forbids them to leave and demands that they give up the boy and Mrs. Dumfrey to the monsters outside so that they can be spared. The group quickly escapes and makes a run for it out to the parking lot. Arriving at David's car, they all pile in. Realizing that they are now safe, they start the car, drive by the rest of the citizens that are inside the store as they prepare to venture out into the unknown. Okay, so if you've seen this movie, you know how it plays out and you know how it ends. So drop in the comments what you like about this movie, what you don't like about it, and your favorite scene. If you haven't seen this movie, you can't possibly know how this frickin' ends. And you can't find out by reading the novella either, because the novella has a completely different ending. If you read the book, you can find out because it's a novelization of the film. But either way, if you want to know what happens to David and the group, you're going to have to go watch the movie. So if you're interested, which I advise you to be, especially if you like Stephen King, watch this movie and come back here and let me know in the comments what you liked about it, didn't like about it, and your favorite scene. Now, in this review, that you may have noticed I didn't really show much. That's because this is a Stephen King movie. I can't really show that much because it'll give away the entire mystery and everything that happens. So I tried to show as little as possible, but enough to get you interested. And it is really a good movie. After not seeing this movie for at least 10 years, and I watched it again, and I enjoyed it even more than I did the first time. There are even things I noticed this time around that I didn't notice before. It's a really, really great movie. Definitely one of the best horror films of the early 2000s. And I'm actually going to have to, especially with, with plot and with the ending, and just, it's so unpredictable. I love this movie. It's so great. I'm going to give this movie a 10 out of 10. That's for plot. That's for acting. Everything. Like, it pleases me in every way that a horror movie should. Like, it didn't give me a lot of jump scares, but, it just surprised me. And I love that in a horror movie, because usually in horror movies, I can predict what the fuck's going to happen, and I can predict the ending. This one, I could not predict what was going to happen, and I could not predict the ending at all. I mean, at all. That ending was fucking whack. In a good way, or in a fucked up way, whichever way you want to look at it. But if you stuck with me this whole time, thank you for watching. Please give it a like, share amongst your friends. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I am at, let me look at this. I am at 341 subscribers right now. I feel blessed as fuck. Like, I started this for fun. I honestly didn't think anything would come of it, really, except for, my friends joining. So those of you that have subscribed, thank you so much. Thank you for, enjoying my content. And, just seeing the more subscribers, it makes you want to do it even more and just pump out as many videos as I can. Also, if you have recommendations, which I have a list already, if you have recommendations of a movie that you would like me to review, rate, and give facts on, then by all means, drop that in the comments too. Or you can go on my Instagram or anything like that and just get at me directly. So until next time, see you then.